There's been a disturbance in the force, if you will. So, kind of breaking, kind of not. It's a couple days after this has really kind of come out. Disney finds itself embroiled in another lawsuit. And what this specifically is about is that the actor, Peter Cushing, obviously Grand Moff Tarkin from Star Wars, or after a certain point, as many know it, Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. Yes, there was a time in which it was just Star Wars and not Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, is being challenged by a friend of Peter Cushing on the allegations that Star Wars digitally recreating Peter Cushing. They do not have the ability. They don't have the right to. Very specifically, I ended up pulling out a Euronews article. I don't know in regards to how viable they are. I don't know in regards to how biased or potentially not biased they are. You can easily corroborate this information with a number of other sources as you see fit. Number of YouTubers even. But the tagline is a film producer is suing Disney using Peter Cushing's likeness in a Star Wars film 22 years after his death. Obviously, this is Rogue One. The actor Peter Cushing's likeness in Rogue One 22 years after his death is being challenged legally by his friend in a case which would impact how films use the images of deceased actors. Peter Cushing is most widely known for his appearance on the original 1977 Star Wars film as Grand Moff Tarkin. Note the, lack of Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. Like I was saying, right there. The imposing British actor's gravitas in a role made him a fan favorite when Disney produced Rogue One, a Star Wars story, the prequel to the events in the 1977 film. He was an obvious character to bring back. Yes, absolutely. From a time-wise perspective, this does make sense. So, there are people obviously, that are going to absolutely be angry about this. And look, internet outrage is 2 weeks. We've talked about this before. In 2 weeks, no one's going to remember this happened. How many people remember the Sniper Wolf Jack's film doxing situation? How many people remember, at this point, the Disney forced arbitration agreement regarding the restaurant at Epcot, right? You see how internet outrage is about 2 weeks, and you can kind of ride that out. However, the legal process does extend beyond that. So while we may comment for the next week and a half about Pal World v. Pokemon right now, right? Pocket Pair versus Pokemon and Nintendo for that patent filing, that's going to have long-lasting repercussions down the line. Like that doesn't end as soon as the internet loses interest. And I wanted to kind of bring up that I feel that, and this kind of exemplifies my point in why I'm a little averse to interacting with not just modern Star Wars media, but the modern Star Wars community. Mostly because there's a lot of hypocrisy. Look, if you only like the original trilogy, 4, 5, 6, that's perfectly fine. I like all 9. Sure, I like the sequel trilogy probably the least. That's one of those, it's second monitor content. It's pretty mid. Things like Canto Bight and 8. Well, 8 did have that Rashomon style of storytelling. Look, I have plot points. The Kukri immediately tore me out of that. The whole Vanishing Kukri act in episode 8. But that's because I do SCA and stuff like that. And, blade work, sword work, footwork, breathing even all comes into play for me. So things like that, do kind of bother me. But I also want to point out kind of the hypocrisy where it is fun to dogpile Disney. Let's pile on them. And to be fair, like with the whole Epcot restaurant situation, they do kind of bring it on themselves. Or I guess I should more appropriately say they find themselves in situations by entities they are potentially or verifiably associated with, in the case of the Epcot restaurant situation, with negligence, and that does reflect on Disney because of proximity to the situation, right? I do want to bring up as well, though, channel which I used to honestly follow, and this is to clarify, this is not any sort of harassment. This is not any sort of any sort of mobilization attack, if you will. This, in my opinion, is a very fair criticism. A channel called Star Wars Theory. In this video, actually, I personally did not like the video. I did watch the entirety of it on my phone. A lot of it didn't really even address, the first minute, address the tweet situation, which I'll get into in a second. But most of it was, well, there's old Star Wars fans. Star Wars used to be different. Star Wars used to be hush-hush. And nowadays, there's these new fake Star Wars fans. And there's just, these e-girls. Bro, if you don't like 1, 2, 3, it's a different story than Star Wars 4, 5, 6. If you don't like the sequel trilogy, you have every right to not like the sequel trilogy. I have watched episode 4 the least number of times. I have watched episode 2 more than I've watched episode 4, okay? Being a Star Wars fan means that you like it. And obviously, as in with any community, right? Look at the furry community. You have your furries. You got your scalies. Furries, chime in how many different subsections you got in that fan base, right? And every fan base is going to have its good people, and it's going to have its stinkers. That's not necessarily something that's even really a hot take, right? Think of the Yu-Gi-Oh fan base, right? You get people at table 500 that legitimately will just rage and be like, oh, well, I spent X amount on my deck. Okay, and grats, you still lost. You still lost to like Chainburn. Get out of my game. and these are not necessarily tied together, right? The unfortunate few is not necessarily tied to certain communities. It can be, but once again, correlation is not causation, dear viewer. I watched this. A lot of it was justifying the action. I think that if we're going to rightly criticize Disney, especially if permission was not asked, if certain things weren't there, what is being argued, from my understanding, is all the way back in 1993 in regards to using likeness, to which, look, I'm going to let the courts hash that out. A tweet was made in regards to fan projects made by Star Wars Theory in regards to, in my opinion, pretty much the same thing. A Twitter user did comment at Mark Hamill. Did this YouTuber ask your permission to use your likeness for an AI deepfake on his YouTube series? AI, already a pretty hot button topic. Deepfakes, already a pretty hot button topic. And all throughout, and I guarantee this is for some sort of like legal whatever, right? This is, consistently, it was not for profit. I'm not making profit off of this. This is my own expenditures. We're not running ads on this, kind of like justifying, no, I'm not making any money off of this. But I mean, I can upload the entirety of clips from Star Wars, right? Which, yes, is legally different, right? And even if I wasn't making money off of them, Disney still has every right to still come in and either copyright claim, send a takedown notice, cease and desist, whatever, right? Friday the 13th, right? The video game got taken off Steam because of not asking for the proper people, from my understanding, for the proper licensing. I mean, this is just how that works. But the tweet did tweet at Mark Hamill, to which Mark Hamill did respond, no. That's all that's being said here, right? That is all that is being said here. No. No to the question, did this YouTuber ask your permission to use your likeness for AI deepfakes in his YouTube series? And to come out with a title of Mark Hamill doesn't like me, the comments I was scrolling through kind of exemplify this correctly. To be fair, Mark only said no, you didn't ask him. That it doesn't imply anything else. So, but Kip, you asked, this is a year ago, this is 8 months ago, why does this matter? So it matters because the Star Wars fan base is very polarizing as is. And if we're going to call out behavior, we need to collectively call out behavior. We need to be consistent, right? Like, that's completely fine. I don't understand the logic of this is seen as generally okay. Well, he's not profiting off of it, right? But you are using it, not only just deepfaking someone, you're using an AI to deepfake someone without asking for their permission. Dear viewer, I extend this to each and every one of you. If I were to somehow know what you look like, sounded like, etc., and I were to use an AI, or I were to use any sort of generative means to create an exact copy of you and use it without permission, whether it's legal or not, would you be upset? Would you feel uncomfortable even? Would you say, well, I mean, you should have asked me first, right? I mean, someone would probably be like, Kip, if you would have asked me, I would have gladly hopped on. You didn't really need to do this. That, a little disingenuous. And I think that's the word. I think it falls into the unfortunately not reasonable side of things. That being said, I mean, I choose to do other things with my time. I used to watch Star Wars Theory. I used to watch a lot of other Star Wars channels a lot, but it got very political, very fast, very polarizing. A common theme of people hating on the prequels. Common theme of just, well, you're just a new age Star Wars fan. Look, I was watching Star Wars 4, 5, and 6 with my dad, okay? Growing up. This is before, just before the prequels came out, right? I remember watching Return of the Jedi on VHS. And there are people that will still say, well, I watched, 1977. I was in theater when it was just called Star Wars, okay? If you're a Star Wars fan, you're a Star Wars fan. I don't watch a lot of modern Disney products because it doesn't market to me, okay? There's nothing more implied by that than I am a consumer. Why should I watch The Acolyte? Why should I watch Mandalorian Season 3? Why should I watch, Bad Batch? Why should I watch anything then when I could just watch Episode 3 or Episode 6 or even Episode 1, Phantom Menace, right? When I could just watch something, sit down for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and, have a good time, right? Not necessarily saying that these products are bad. I'm not necessarily slagging them off. What I am saying is I feel that is a failure on Disney to market to people like me. And a lot of the hypocrisy and a lot of, like this video entailed, right? I mean, if you want to go watch the original, that's fine. I personally, it was one of those where it was a lot of justification. It was a lot of, I guess, disbelief that someone who is self-proclaimed as the largest Star Wars channel on YouTube says he does so much. And you can definitely tell there's a little bit of a butthurt in there. That being said, like, I think we need to make sure that we're being consistent, right? There's a lot of people, I'm sure, that would say, well, Star Wars Theory, or insert Star Wars channel here, is perfectly fine making a Leia Organa, a Carrie Fisher deepfake, or, you know, making a Mark Hamill fish take. I can't escape the fish. Deepfake, right? Or even a Sheev Palpatine fish take. I can't remember their names right now offhand. Please excuse me. So this is one of those things, and also on the side here you can see this is also why I don't know. I look at this, I see Forbes, I see Acolyte, and I really don't want to deal with the politics. That's not just this video thing. I personally just don't see the value in it. If that's your thing, that's your thing. Remember, at the end of the day, a Star Wars fan is a Star Wars fan. Whether they started on Star Wars in 1977, whether they started on Episode 7 and then went back, whether they started on the Clone Wars as a child and then watched the actual line of movies, whether you've met George Lucas, whether you've met, I can't remember her name, Kathleen Kennedy. I don't know who heads Star Wars right now, if I'm being completely honest. Whether you have this educated analysis on the storytelling elements presented by Rian Johnson in Episode 8, whether you hate episodes 1 through 3, right? Something that I have said multiple times that I love, right? You're a Star Wars fan. You're not a fake fan. You're not a fake e-girl, we're going to do this fan, right? And you're a Star Wars fan. And choose to engage with what you deem is relevant, what you deem is appropriate with your time. So I just want to make sure that pointing this out, because this is relevant. Yes, it is funny for people to dogpile, like I said, on the giant company, on the big corporation, on the mouse, if you will. But, we need to make sure that we're also being consistent. And the comment section does seem to rightfully be calling this out, right? Obviously, satire. I ran into Mark Hamill at a hotel once, asked him if the cup of coffee on the table next to him was his. He said, no, I feel your pain, right? So, be an adult. If you don't want to engage, that's perfectly fine. And even then, you don't have to explain your justification to me, as I don't have to explain my justification to you. Part of being an adult is agreeing to disagree and making sure you're consistent. Because, as we've argued for the past week, what the biggest thing that I feel makes creators, channels, entities, corporations, the biggest thing that I feel makes them fail is when we start engaging in hypocrisy, hypocritical practices. Oh my God, I cannot speak today. But I digress. What are your thoughts? Obviously, this is an old situation. I'm using this video specifically as a citation for events preceding this. That being said, I'm also curious to see where this is going to go because it is being alleged on by a friend. I don't know where the estate's at in this. I don't know where his family's at in this. And you could also make an argument hypothetically where, well, the family's wishes, or if there was a contract signed in 93, or some provision was signed in 93. There's a number of angles to go with this, and this is something that interests me. But I think also, you can use this as a shield, even, if you will. You have a buddy, you have a friend, you have someone that tries to argue Star Wars with yours, wink, wink, and you just say, look, I like what I like. I'm a Star Wars fan. That's all there is to it. So take it easy, everyone. I'm curious to see where this goes. Remember, the internet outrage is only 2 weeks, and have yourself a wonderful day.